Okay, everybody ready? See all those smiling faces out there looking to hit the lottery. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Chairman Bill Werkheiser to bless this meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to serve, and we thank you for all these people who are here to serve you. And Father, we just ask for wisdom as you have asked us to ask for, and we just pray that we would do the right thing. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, up front, have all of you seen the order that we're going to go in? It's on the message that went out, and we're not going to deviate from that if we can help it. In the past, we've done it for people that had other meetings, other places they had to be, but I hadn't got anybody say anything to me about that at this time. And as we go down, we're going to work off the tracking sheet like we always do. And you'll see on there in every agency, there's an indication at the beginning with an S or a equal sign. That's a universal budget item that's not going to change. It's in everyone, so you don't have to talk about that when you come up. But particularly, let us know if there's something significant that you feel like you have to have, and there are no time constraints here. I'm going to be here till it's over, and we want to hear everybody. And I think some of them on the bottom of the list would probably like you to hustle along, but yeah, we still don't have all our members. But we're going to go ahead and start. So first up is
transportation. I think Alan's behind. I think.
Does that pardon you?
Sir.
No. First up is the Georgia Public Safety Training Center. Good afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'll start off with 3910.3. The first two are statewide changes. 3910.3 is for two positions. Last year you passed in the Senate, it was Senate Bill 37 that expanded arrest powers for jailers. In the current jail curriculum, there's a good bit of information that we don't cover, which is arresting a free citizen. That pertains to the Fourth Amendment. So this money would to be hire two positions and come up with a curriculum to educate these jailers on the arrests that they make should be legal. The next is 3910.4. That is for two instructors and the equipment for positions. So basic mandate expansion, you fund that last year. These two positions, as we asked for in the funding last year, because we had conversations with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. Originally, they thought they were going to be able to fund it. They got news from the federal government they could not fund it.
Who was that?
Governor's Office of Highway Safety originally was going to fund it.
Okay.
Then they were told later in conversation by the federal government that they can't fund it because it was a mandate at that point, so they can't fund mandates. So that information passed on to us. That's already been passed through post-council to include those two items in the curriculum. So that's, your drinkers, your alcohol, the speed detection for radar, LiDAR. So if you look at that, that is a little bit elevated numbers for normally two positions, but those are supervisory positions. One will be handling the north side of the state, one will handle the south side of the state.
What are you going to do with all those people that have to take training, like high-speed training? Or is there going to be any tracks built, or are they all going to have to come to the Public Safety Training Center? Or how are you going to schedule all that with everybody in the state having to go through it now?
You see, sir, my hair's turning kind of like yours. I used to have a head full of it, and it's turning a little more gray.
Well, you worked for me long enough, it made my hair gray.
Well, that worked as well, I agree. So a couple of things. Number one, the scheduling is already on the books, and we're moving into 2026. And I will tell you, it will affect advanced specialized training until we get a handle on the basic mandate to kind of have a better understanding of what we're doing. We did make a request for, so if you go down to the next item, 3910.5, that's to reduce funding that you just give us last year for a building that we were renting in Pickens County. So I'll give you a little bit of a story on that Pickens County facility. It started out in Dalton, then it went to Rome. So we've been all over the place the last 5 or 6 years and hadn't found anywhere to land. We've worked with state properties to try to find existing state property or just raw land to build somewhere. I can tell you that it's non-existent. So we asked for, there's a piece of property up there that come available. Well, it's $18 million, but it has the property and the space to move a training center on the north side. That we could build a track up there and arrange that would take some stress off for Forsyth. It's a lot of money, but this $15,000 that if it's taken away and we do find somewhere to land temporarily, because Alpharetta Police Department has been gracious enough to let us use their training room, that's a temporary fix. I mean, at some point that chief is going to want their training room back, and then we have nowhere to go right now. And that academy will eventually do a pretty substantial impact to that agencies in the state because we won't be able to conduct training. So, yes, everything you asked and mentioned it's going to be a problem the next several years for scheduling and meeting that advanced specialized demand.
What about that property in Savannah I told you about that they were willing to donate to the state? Have you ever had any contact with them? And
yes, sir. We had a conversation about that as well, and it was an initial conversation. They were going to get back in touch with me, and there's never been a follow-up after that.
Any questions? Number 16.
Thank you. Can you just tell us about the need for legally defensible training records and what we need to have accurate records statewide for that training?
Yes, I can. So currently, the training records are all over the place. So Post maintains a system. We maintain the system, and I can tell you those records are not exact. So there's not truly a state-ran training software that's controlled by the state that encompasses everything. We've asked for a system a couple of times. It's, again, very expensive to do that, but that would encompass all public safety. And, you know, in the event of a riot or a natural disaster, that GMA needed to know how many dive teams are in the state. With that software, not only to document the training records, we could tell you how many dive teams are in the state of Georgia and where they were located. Bomb techs. Also, from the training perspective, it would email that individual officer and say, hey, you've got 30 days to take this training. 10 days later, if they hadn't taken it, it would email probably a supervisor or their designated person. So it's very important. Again, we've asked for it several times. It's not been funded, but currently there is not a system in place that is all-encompassing to answer your question. Yes, sir.
Now, we've looked at it. I think some of the people flew in from across the country to meet with me in Savannah one time, and they had what I thought to be an excessive amount of money that they wanted for the system. But we whittled it down to where I thought it was palatable last year, and then it just didn't happen. But,
yeah, so they've came back for a 5-year quote, and I can tell you because I've got it on the back here if you got it handy. So 5-year is a little bit over $9 million, $9.6 million.
It was like $50 million to begin with,
Yes,
and then
it
they got
was.
it down to $15 million. So,
and that would be all encompassing, not just law enforcement. That would be all
Right.
public safety that could use that system.
and I guess I don't know who would be the main keeper of the records, but then you and Post would all be online and be able to share records, and
Yes, sir. That's correct.
and the rest of the public safety agencies across the state too.
Yes, sir. That's
It's
the idea.
it's a good
behind
thing. It's just, you know, what we always run into is lack of money. We substantially over in our supplemental budget already. So,
it. Yes, sir.
any questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Hope you keep some of that gray hair. Next up is the Department of Law. I know, you can apologize for being late, but I know you got here when you wanted to. Mr. Attorney General.
Chair, there's a lot of conversation about hair. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I just got to say, I'm a little nervous. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you all so much for having us. And I'm here to present the Law Department's FY26 budget. Obviously, 3311 is a statewide change. 3312 is an increase in funding for 4 positions to expand the gang prosecution unit to the Savannah region in the amount of $536,928. And with your support, as y'all know, and we're so grateful, we created Georgia's first statewide gang prosecution unit to dismantle violent criminal street gangs across the state. Since we started in July 22, we've secured 52 convictions and indicted more than 140 individuals statewide. Last year, with y'all's help and support, we expanded the unit to Columbus, Macon, and Southeast Georgia. And this was in addition to staff that we already had in Augusta, Atlanta, and Albany. So this new funding would allow us to further expand our efforts to the Savannah area by providing 2 prosecutors and 2 investigators. 3313 is an increase in funds for the Georgia Building Authority rent due to the relocating to our newly renovated law building in the amount of $1,109,919. And as we mentioned during the amended budget presentation, we want to say thanks for the support of this committee and so many folks, because we are now in our newly renovated space. But this resulted in a net increase in our total square footage and a total rent and total rent payments to the Georgia Building Authority. 3314 statewide change. 3315 is an increase in funds for the 3rd and final phase of our merit-based retention initiative for attorney positions in the amount of $1,594,143. This final phase of funding is critical to address the recruitment and retention needs of the department, and we ask you all for your continued support in this area. 3316 is an increase in funds for 6 positions to expand the human trafficking unit to the Macon and Augusta regions. As we mentioned during our amended presentation, we're currently centrally located in the metro Atlanta area, and this funding would allow for us to expand to Augusta and Macon to address the human trafficking problem that exists in those areas of the state. And just one strategic point, obviously that's where our major interstates are, so we'd be able to handle 75, 16, and 20. 3317 is an increase in other funds to retain an additional $125,000 in lemon law fees for a total of $625,000. As the cost of administrating the lemon law program has grown, we're asking you to allow us to retain an additional portion of the revenue that we collected so that we can cover the costs of this program. And then we have the Medicaid fraud unit, and under that tracker, 3321, 3322 are statewide. 3323 would be the increase in funds for that final phase of our merit-based retention initiative for the attorney positions in the amount of $30,821. And with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to take any questions.
What's the salary for your entry-level attorneys over there now?
So, Adam, right?
Yeah, I think our starting salary right now is at about $72,000. When we started this 3-year, these 3 chunks of money to work on our salaries, starting salary is about $60,000.
And has that been beneficial to retention?
It has certainly helped us a great deal, Mr. Chairman. We continue to face competitive challenges with other government agencies.
That's I'm very aware of that. They and assistant DAs all over the state have issues, and the government just doesn't pay like the private sector, although I know some attorneys in the private sector aren't doing well either.
We're struggling against government and our own clients at times.
Yeah.
But it also helps with retention too, Mr. Chairman, so we thank you.
But you still got a career ladder, and those who've been on for a substantial amount of time, I know you've got some been over there 15, 20 years.
And we've been good, I think, at maintaining. I think, again, now we're doing better bringing people in that year 1 to 5. Then maybe some folks have families and education needs and that type of thing. And then I think we've done a pretty good job for those that have been here 12, 15 years. We got folks that have been here 25 to 30 years.
I just think it's a struggle for a young attorney who just got out of law school and passed the bar and got school repayments to deal with and married and got a child or two. I mean, 70,000 really isn't a whole lot of money anymore. One day.
That's right. And the delta between the private sector, particularly
yeah.
here, but even
Yeah.
all across the state. But that said, it is a big help because if people want to come and do great work, and you have some very interesting work at the law department, it gives us a chance to.
Unfortunately, it's a good place to start, but and for a variety of reasons, they don't stay there a long time.
That's
'Cause
that gap.
I
Yes, sir.
stole a couple from over there myself. So
There may be others that have too, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not pointing anybody out.
well, I don't care anymore. Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking about when I came out of school looking for my first job.
Ride your horse, sir.
Many years after you had been out, I'm so much younger than you. So I know it was tough on you. But I thought the dream job would at least give me $10,000 in life insurance. That was the goal I wanted to meet. But the question I have for you, and good to see you,
Good
sir.
to see you, sir.
What are the successes of the human trafficking efforts? How many arrests, how many convictions over the last, say, 18 months? Just give me an idea.
Well, I'll give you, and thank you, Representative Williams. And today is Advocacy Day, so you've probably seen a lot of folks from the human trafficking space that are over there. We've rescued and assisted now over 200 children, and I keep saying that is 200 lives that will forever be changed. We've now got over 50 convictions since we started in 2019, but that includes, remember, a couple years that the courts were kind of behind in due to COVID. But the continued partnerships that we had, and again, the continued expansion, and just what we're seeing is to be able, the raised awareness has helped. Partnering with DAs, partnering with the federal government has helped. We're going to focus actually going forward. We've done a lot, but we really are going to focus on the missing children piece of this. And there's a lot of reasons, a variety of reasons that children are missing, and homelessness and poverty and the things that we need to focus on and are. But we're really proud of it. But we have been full. It was interesting to see how we got the cases at the beginning. There were a lot of cases that may have been out there that others hadn't handled, but now that we've raised the awareness because of the resources y'all have given us, we're just getting more and more cases, and it's tough. And I'll say this too, we're going after sellers, we're going after buyers, and we're going after enablers. In fact, I was just talking about, we just had our 14th conviction, I believe I'm right, 14th conviction in one case involving a 17-year-old girl in Fulton County, buyers and sellers. We convicted a hotel clerk that was taking advantage of the system at one of the hotels that he was working at. We prosecuted him. And we have, again, first time a disabled adult that we're prosecuting individuals that were trafficking them. So it's an evil industry that gets worse by the day.
Vice Chairman.
Thank you for what y'all do on the human trafficking. Just following up with when I grow up, I want to be like these two fellas. So I just thought I'd put that in. I know that the First Lady is really behind a lot of human trafficking. I know GBI works real hard on that. And do y'all work collaboratively?
We
y'all
do.
all work
Absolutely.
together, funding, anything goes together. I was just curious about that.
And I'm grateful for them, everything that they do. I've said it before, when governors and first ladies make an issue it matters, raises the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the amount of attention that has been brought now to bear on human trafficking, it's, whether it's the trainings we're seeing from Delta, UPS, convenience stores, you name it, the partnerships that we have with the GBI at the local level, the federal level, it's been amazing. In fact, I was asked, and people say, oh, is Atlanta or Georgia the capital of human trafficking? Well, nobody has the data, but I know this because I work with AGs around the country. Nobody is doing what we are doing from a prosecutorial standpoint, a law enforcement standpoint, training and legislative perspective to fight human trafficking. And it matters. I mean, think about it. When the average age of a victim is a 14 to 17-year-old girl in Georgia, that's what we're seeing. That's an important part of the time in their life. I mean, I've got two daughters, and again, we're talking about the 8th to the 11th grade. So we are doing the right thing in Georgia, and we got to continue to do it because I think we're sending a message to folks. Don't do it here, but it's a big project. It's online. There's a lot of things we still got to do. But I'm so grateful for the folks that are sitting over there, folks in the front row. But again, it's all of our law enforcement that are now aware of it. We had two folks from Ohio that deputies in I think it was Greene County that we arrested 2 individuals trafficking a girl, and that was because of training. So the training that's happening, and the Grace Commission has brought everybody together in all those different areas, from training to law enforcement, prosecutions, restoration, and it matters. And so we're just at the forefront. We need to continue to do that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just so glad y'all are all working together
do.
because it's such a problem.
Well, because we got expertise. And think about, again, if you're willing, if people of goodwill want to make it happen, and in this state, again, I saw it at economic development, and I now see it law enforcement. People around the state say, how are you doing this? And there is just a different way that we do it. We've been able to leverage it. We've done our anti-gang network. We've done it in many different parts of the state where we brought federal, state, and local law enforcement together for the first time to talk about gang activity. And 80% of all human trafficking is gang-related. The First Lady's got the Grace Commission. We're doing it with organized retail crime and organized theft, opioids. There's a lot of ways we're doing it. We just do it differently, and I think we got to keep investing in that.
Thank you so much.
Number 16.
You all mentioned earlier that as far as competing for attorneys, talented attorneys, that you can struggle not just with the private sector, which is to be expected, but other government, parts of government. Would you tell us, particularly in terms of retention of talented attorneys, what you feel are competitive salary levels for retaining attorneys, past 5 years?
Well, I'll let my Chief Deputy Wright Banks answer this too. The thing, sir, it's going to be hard to do that financially because there's such a delta now between what we're doing and what the private sector. I mean, when you start talking about bonuses and all that type of thing, we are having challenges, as the chairman said, DA's offices, other 8 state agencies, and others. But I do think, again, what we have done to go from almost a singular civil practice to now having a criminal practice as well. We've tried to focus on the things that we can do. We got a great new building because of the increased salaries. We're trying to do the things that we can do, and I think people appreciate the work. So I think at the end of the day, if quality of life matters, you're able to get in the courtroom, or you're able to do what you're able to do in our department that you don't have to do in the private sector by billing necessarily, although there is one element obviously of our department that does bill. But I think there's a quality of life aspect. But from your perspective on retention, would you mind commenting on that?
Sure. Like you reach a point in the I've been there 31 years, so I'm still poor. But you reach a point in the cycle, where you're not going to compete with the outside private world in compensation. But I can tell you that week before last, I had one experienced employee offered a job with a state agency, $30,000 raise on the table. And I said, will the work you do there be better than the work you do here? And the answer, no. So if you can nudge the money up a little bit, the work will help you carry the day sometimes in terms of offsetting the potential adjustment. Same week, had another person, outsider, we were trying to hire. Government job with a local metropolitan government offered to that person $15,000 higher than our offer. And I said to that person, would the work you do there be better than what you think? And the person said, the people I've met here, I want to work with them. Like, I want to work with them. And she ultimately took the job. But, you got to hit that right mix, but it's not for everybody. People are going to come, and everybody that started with me is, they all have really nice vacation homes, and and I don't, but sometimes they invite me there.
Terry, what Wright's trying to say is he's rich in experience. He's rich in experience.
Representative Williams, again.
Rice, don't leave me yet. My goodness, boy, you make a Philadelphia lawyer look poor. but the chairman will remember there was a guy in Savannah, Julius Kaminsky, on Southern Motors. I worked for him in the 70s as a salesman. I quit 4 times. And each time, right, you must have taught him. He convinced me I was making twice the money I was making. Until I went to the grocery store and his twice didn't add up. We need you in every department where we're having problems. You need to convince folk. Trust me, you're rich.
You just don't know how well you've got it. Right.
And what don't want to badger you with questions, but the one other thing is the organized retail crime. That was a new innovation. I just wondered how that was going.
Yeah, so got a great lawyer that we hired out of Cobb County that was expert in RICO, and so we're putting that unit together. And Chairman, you're going to hear more out of them here in the coming weeks. So thank you again, because again, that's a big deal, and it's even broader than I think that we anticipated when you start looking at the reach of who the folks on the criminal side are and where the money's going and that type of thing. So this is going to be a good investment from the
Well,
state.
I've dealt with it some with in the trucking industry.
Yes, sir.
You know, and that's
Yes, sir.
I heard the other day somebody stole a tractor trailer load of eggs, which in this day and time is a pretty valuable commodity.
Diapers, baby formula, Home
Computers.
Depot, CVS, pallets, even high industrial pallets. There's a group out of Alpharetta, a company out of Alpharetta. They found a bunch of them in New Mexico. So yeah, it's a big deal. There's a way to make money.
And y'all know sometimes the truck driver's involved too. Stop at a darn truck stop, leave the truck running, go inside, and surprise, it's gone when he comes back out. And but I appreciate what you do, and we don't have any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
y'all.
coming.
Appreciate it.
Department of Public Safety.
Man, you look familiar.
He gets special preference. I'm not all that keen on it, but my wife really likes him.
You keep him up.
Since he's my son.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's truly an honor to be
I like
here.
you calling me chairman too.
Yeah. I was going to leave you out, but I thought better of it. But it's an honor to be here and have the opportunity to speak with you. For our fiscal year 2026 budget under Section 39, page 13 of your tracking sheet, you'll find a Department of Public Safety where you'll see we only have statewide adjustments. So if you have any questions about any of that stuff, I'll be glad to take those questions. If not, I'd talk about our capital projects if y'all want me to.
What about your trooper school? I heard the other day what you started off with, what, 65 or
About 64, yes, sir.
64, and what do you have now?
39.
That's 4 weeks.
Right. And a majority of that has been people walking out the door that made their self-determination that this was not for them, or it was too rough, or whatever the determination was. We've had some failures, but the majority of them just decided this was not the job for them.
Any questions? Huh?
He only allows me 2 a session.
What about the Oconee bond?
You talking about for the patrol post?
Yeah.
We have $2.4 million for ours, and then I think it's 1.2 or 1.1 for the actual land clearing and that. But that's our portion of it. The other portion will be GBI and DDS.
GBI is paying for the state patrol business
No,
now?
sir. It's going to be a
Joint?
There'll be a state patrol post, a GBI building, and
Oh,
a
okay.
DDS on the
Okay.
same complex, and we're working with GISFIC to work out all the land clearing and all that to sort of be done properly and fairly. So, but we already have the 2.4 has already been appropriated to us.
Okay. Number 17?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Part of your aviation is in my home county of Tattnall. So tell me about the helicopters, how many you have, mechanics, just kind of a overview of what's going on there.
Okay. Currently, we have about 15 of our helicopters. Now, 2 of those are the old OH-58s, which are the old Army surplus. One of them is already being cannibalized for parts for the other one. The last one has about 4 hours on it before it has to be rebuilt. At that point, we'll turn that into surplus. So we're at 13 helicopters. And at one time, we had 5 mechanics. Now we're at 3. And the issue with that is at that time that we had 5 mechanics, they were mostly Bell 206s or Jet Rangers, were not as complex as what we have now. We only have 1 407. Now we have 7 407s, Bell 429, and a Bell 412, which are a lot more complex. So I think we're in a need to increase our mechanics just for safety purposes, and we are having to put some of that work out into the private sector, which is costing us a little bit more money.
Are you able to hire those now, or is that something you need put in the budget so you can hire them?
Yes, sir, we do not have a position for that to be hired a mechanic. We would need that put in the budget for us to hire.
The positions went away with the people that left.
Yes, sir. Well, and the last position we lost was in 2020 during COVID when we did some budget reductions. So we lost a position there.
And I know this, but a lot of people don't. All the maintenance on the helicopters is done on an hourly basis. Everything in that helicopter, when it's been there for a certain number of hours, it has to be replaced. Because I remember the first time it came up with me, and they wanted like $40,000 for a rotor. And I thought that was a terrible high price to pay. And the guy said, well, do you want to fly around in a helicopter that the rotor blades expired? And I said, very obviously no. But
And sometimes they surprise you what they find at those hourly inspections that you're not expecting.
Yeah, I should go
So,
open one.
and nothing in aviation is cheap.
nope. Any more questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tell Mom I helped you.
Next time, I want you to clean all those stars. They look nice. What do they think?
Everyone's 5 years.
That's all right.
Service.
How many did Dad have? About 2? He had them all up there.
Thank you very much.
This is my 56th year in state government. So, okay, next up is Office of Highway Safety.
That's a tough one to follow.
Well, I don't think my wife knows you. But she does.
If you allow me, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna bring along with me driver's education director Josh Turner. Thank you all so much, Mr. Chairman and committee. I want to bring to your attention line item 39.11, which will be on the track list, page 14. That's the portion of rent. As you know, we moved from 7 MLK down to 2 MLK, which is east side of the Twin Towers.
I just went over there a little while ago for a meeting. You got some pretty good digs right now.
Yes,
Don't even
sir.
have to ride the elevator.
Our rent, Mr. Chairman, went from $95,940 to $143,750.92. So that's the increase of rent. And I want to thank the OPB and the governor's office for that kind recommendation of the $21,000 there for the rent. If we move down to line item 39.113, this is not really for 3 additional employees. It's due to the fact that in 2023, the federal government no longer funded the fund source of 402 CP, which was the community programs. In that pile of funding, it was a sort of a catch-all fund. And at that particular time, because it went away, we had, at that time, 8 employees in that funding source. So we had to move 5 of the employees to a different funding source, which actually left 3 of the staff members, and those were state-funded positions. So these are not new positions. These are existing positions from at least average of 6 or 7 years of positions.
What do these three people do?
So these three, one is the IT person, one is the business support administrator, and one is the compliance person. So these are valuable positions that we need, and they're not additional staff members.
How many personnel you have in Office of Highway Safety now?
27.
Used to be in the 30s, didn't it?
I think at one time, Mr. Chairman, it was around 30. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible, but I wanted to reiterate to the board that these are not additional positions based on, and I think Representative Williams, he's questioned me in a previous meeting about the dollar for dollar. The dollar for dollar is because of the state funds, which now we're asking roughly about $738,000. So a dollar for dollar, the feds will match that. So our total funds matching that, Representative Williams, is about $1.4 million. But that's not included what we draw down because of population and our program, which is about 21 million. That 21 million, it helps the state to fund different agencies throughout the state. So we're only asking a minimum of what you see on the track list with the increases what I just enumerated here.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
These were federal funds that the grants went away.
Yes, sir.
So in addition, if these grants are in place, do you draw down more money for the state having put those back in?
Yes, sir. If we had the opportunity and with the state support, we could draw another 8 or 10%, which right now we only draw down probably around 5%. Ms. Orr, you want to explain that? That's about 5%. But the state, the Fed said we can at least draw 18%.
That's just with these three positions.
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, if there's no question, could I yield the rest of my time to Mr. Turner?
Well, he asked for special consideration last time to go first. I think we're going to hold him to last today. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Just want to bring your attention to line 39.12.1. This is for the Driver's Education Commission. Each year, the Joshua's Law collections are estimated, and for the last about 7 years or so, that's been about $2.9 million. And recently, through HB 242 in the 2023 session, the surcharge collection amount went from 1.5% to 3%. So we're beginning to see those increases come in the actual collections. So OPB has worked with us to increase our initial estimated amount to the about 3.4 million, which mirrors the actual collections for last year. This will enable us to budget better throughout the year and more equally award our scholarships throughout the course of the fiscal year.
Have we got to the point yet where those who are not those driver education training fundings are above those people who are less fortunate with funding opportunities?
So we eliminated those that do not meet our financial needs basis. So all of our applicants are either financial need or they are the child or dependent of a public safety professional that was killed in the line of duty or military that was killed or injured in the line of duty.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good to be before you again this afternoon.
I'm sorry you ran off the other day and left me. I think we're going to probably have to deduct some money for that.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for that. I had dental appointment last week that I canceled and rescheduled for yesterday. And
I had to do that myself last week, so I understand.
and I understand in the legislature there's so many things going on that sometimes you run a little bit behind.
I saw you out waiting in my office, and I asked where you were. They said you were busy and had to
I
leave.
sent you a text last night just to apologize for having to leave. I know.
No, go
I
ahead.
come before you today full of regret and sorry. So sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No.
Is there anything I can do for you, Mr. Chairman?
What you got?
Not much.
I know that drill. No. Well, I'm just before we get started, I'm proud to see that you've kind of gotten out of the hole over there, and I mean, I really didn't know a couple of years ago whether you were going to survive or not, and I'm not sure you're well funded, but you're a whole lot better off than you were.
We are much better off than we were, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. And
well, the grant programs across the country are really nobody has any idea what's going to occur there.
None at all. So if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak about that just for a minute before I get into I provided you all a handout that shows what we've done over the last few years with our grant awards to our partners. A lot of that has come obviously through the VOCA funds, and I'm not going to go over every slide. You have those slides if you want to look at all of them, and I'll be happy to answer questions for any of them. I do want to thank you for the help that you provided for us, both from the Victims Compensation Fund the last couple of years and for the sexual assault and domestic violence funding, the same funding that we received last year. Significant funds that have helped fill that hole that you speak of. In fiscal year 24, we awarded a total of $113,953,000 from 12 formula and supplemental federal programs. I think that may be the third slide that you have in that presentation. Just for victim services. This is just for victim services. This fiscal year 25, again, we've awarded $113 million. That is with only 9 funding sources now, with a significant funding source being ARPA funds, and then the additional state funds that went into our budget in the current fiscal year. In state fiscal year 26, we are projecting that our total award will only be $82 million, down from the $113 million that we're awarding right now. Our programs with ARPA funds have until September 30th of next year, so they still have a year and a half. They may be, hopefully, we've encouraged them to try to spread that out over the 2 years, so that may not be a $30 million impact starting October 1, but the amount of money that we're going to have to award out starting October 1 will be $30 million less than it is in the current fiscal year, just as an FYI. For our budget request, page 8, line 30.5.2, we're asking for $400,312 for funds for the Receiving Hope Center. The Receiving Hope Center, you may remember, is the human trafficking receiving center in Paulding County. This $400,000 reflects a loss of $400,000 in ARPA funds that are expiring. So this $400,000 will allow us to maintain that level of funding for the Receiving Hope Center for the commercially sexually exploited children that are being served there. We have VOCA funds, TANA funds, and Safe Harbor funds that go to that in appropriations. Line 30.5.3, $421,608 to support the 866 End HTGA hotline for human trafficking. I want to, if I could, Mr. Chairman, talk to you a little bit about our human trafficking work and about this hotline.
Well, you know, we didn't fund it in supplemental, and I think there's some misunderstanding. You sent some people to talk to me, and I have a better sense of what the problem was. And
I've reached out to a number of the committee members, and I would like to, if I could,
sure,
share a little bit about that. The human trafficking work in the state of Georgia, especially since the Kemps have been elected and the First Lady has made this her priority, the work that we do in the state on human trafficking is far advanced over the course of these last 6 years. I know Attorney General Carr talked about the work that they're doing in the AG's office. We have partnered with the AG's office and with GBI on some grant funds to really help improve the enforcement and prosecution of perpetrators of human trafficking. We've also done some significant work to provide better services for those victims of human trafficking, led by the First Lady and the Grace Commission, and I think it's 10 legislative 10 bills that she's had passed through the legislature to address this issue. We've worked very closely with the statewide human trafficking task force, which is in our office. We have the Receiving Hope Center in Paulding County that we did not have. We have Grace's Place in Gwinnett County, a receiving center there as well, that has just come online in the last year or so. The efforts and the ability for the state of Georgia to address human trafficking is far greater than it was just 6 years ago. And we appreciate the fact that we've been able to be a part of that. Over the last several years, there have been a couple of additional issues that we've been trying to deal with. This, I believe, in talking with Commissioner Brose and DHS and Department of Family and Children Services, we believe that we now, because of what we've learned and the strides that we've made and the steps that we've taken, we believe we're in a position to where we can more efficiently and effectively handle the calls that are coming into the human trafficking hotline. There are a couple of things that stand out to us that brought us to the place to where we felt it necessary to ask for these funds. The Georgia Cares handled the human trafficking hotline previously. There were some issues there. About 4 years ago, I believe, we put out an RFP for a nonprofit to handle the human trafficking hotline. The Child Advocacy Centers of Georgia has been handling that over the last several years. The Department of Family and Children Services have had issues with the Child Advocacy Centers of Georgia not reporting, even though they're a mandatory reporter, not reporting on many occasions when CSEC victims are reported to them. She's written documentation. She's addressed that. She's also had instances where the CACGA has interviewed minors who are in DFACS custody without informing DFACS that they were going to be doing those interviews. That is a significant issue that she's tried to address. In having conversations with her, she feels, and we believe that it is true as well, that DFACS with the Special Victims Unit can handle those calls for CSEC victims more efficiently and more effectively, and that's one of the reasons why you've seen that ad in her budget for the Special Victims Unit. We also, on a regular basis, call those individuals who are responsible for the hotlines, those organizations responsible for the hotlines, to ensure that they are responsive to the calls. We make cold calls as if we are someone that's got something to report. If we don't get an answer, we wait for a callback. In August of last year, we started recognizing some significant issues with Frontline Response. Frontline Response is the nonprofit that we contract with to provide services for adult victims, residential services for adult victims of human trafficking. We started calling them more frequently when we recognized that they were not being as responsive as they should. While we were involved in that effort, I got a call from the First Lady's office that someone had reached out to her wanting to know why Frontline Response was not answering the hotline. we dug in a little bit deeper, and by the way, one of the times that we finally did get an answer to Frontline's hotline, the response they gave us was, "We have no beds in Georgia. You need to look out of state." That's not the kind of response that we want to see in Georgia with the focus that we have on human trafficking and protecting victims of human trafficking. Our office, beginning in August of last year, started answering those adult calls on the hotline. Lindsay Cheatham in our office is a victim advocate that we did a grant with GBI to help establish the HEAT unit a few years ago. It was important, they felt, and we did too, that there be a victim advocate on site when they did a sting operation to be there with those victims that were being rescued. They wanted that individual to be housed at CJCC. Lindsay is in that role. She has responded many times with GBI and does a great job there. Lindsay has been answering our hotline since August, 24/7. We worked with HR to try to figure out how we could reward her for that. The best thing we could come up with was we gave her a $3,000 one-time supplement for taking on additional responsibilities, and she's been answering that hotline 24/7 since August. We have other employees that have stepped in to take it when she's not able to. What the funding that we're asking for will do will allow us to hire 2 full-time employees so that we can bring that human trafficking hotline in-house. We have 4 victim advocates in the Victims Compensation Unit that work with victims that are trying to go through the victims compensation process. They need assistance in getting police records and police reports and other documentation in order to show that they have eligible expenditures for reimbursement. These 4 victim advocates will be trained to answer the hotline. The 2 that we hire will be cross-trained to provide victim advocacy with Victims Comp. And with that team of 6, we'll be able to provide not only the advocacy needed in Victims Comp, but we'll be able to man this hotline 24/7 without it falling on Lindsay to have that full-time responsibility. This funding allows us, with those employees, to man the hotline from Monday morning until Friday evening. There is some funding in there that is for contractors. We'll have contractors answering the call from Friday evening until Monday morning, so that we'll be ensured that the hotline will be answered 24/7. Having this kind of internal control will ensure that the calls are being answered, that the victims are being sent to the appropriate places, and that the services are being provided. We just believe, along with DHS, we believe that this will provide a more efficient and more effective response to human trafficking.
Well, I'm going to answer it a whole lot quicker than you gave it, but
Okay.
our brief synopsis was the last time that we thought it was just a duplication, and we had no idea that there was any problem with the hotline in place. And it looked like, from our perspective, we were having unpaid employees handle it effectively, and we couldn't see the need for having paid employees to take it over. After hearing what's really going on, I think it changes everybody's perspective, and we certainly want the phones answered 24/7, 7 days. And make sure that the people that answer the phones are knowledgeable enough to direct people in the right place. So we're sorry if we misunderstood.
Mr. Chairman, I take responsibility for that. As I looked at this ad, it was to me, it seemed like a simple ad that was a small enough amount that it was a safe ad. I tried to be respectful of time, and I did not do justice to presenting the need in that last committee. So this isn't on you. I didn't do my job as well as I should have last time.
Well, I think you did a great job. It's just a failure to communicate. We didn't understand either, and took some action that probably wasn't very responsible. So.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we are working with the Senate to try to get that restored, and we would appreciate, if we're able to, your all supporting conference. And
well, I wouldn't trust them very much.
As a former House member, I understand that.
If you look at General Oglethorpe sitting up there on the north steps, you notice he's looking that way. I always say he's looking that way to keep an eye on the Senate. So, number 16.
Just to add to that, from my vantage point, from our subcommittee, there was also a feeling that traditionally you have been able to get reliable contractors, essentially, and as you have stated, that at least for the weekend, this will be contracted out. And I certainly appreciate, and as I told the committee, I appreciate the commitment to quality control. Is it your position then that this can no longer be reliably contracted out, essentially? I mean, you mentioned 2 providers that have not been up to snuff, and that your position that there is not a 3rd or 4th that would be reliable to do this on a statewide level.
In our conversations with Commissioner Bros, we both believe that these victims are too important for us to risk yet another failed opportunity for the victims in the state of Georgia. Our employees that will be answering it, and those contractors that will be answering it, will be triaging basically and making sure that those victims get to the right service providers. Because we're on the front end of the triage, it'll be easier for us to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do once the victims are passed along to them. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay, I want to make sure I understood you correctly. Maybe I misunderstood you, but you called Lindsay in, who's obviously an excellent employee, back. She covered this 24/7. She had 2 people to come in to do what she was doing. Seems like by herself. And my question and concern is, $3,000 supplement for what it sounds like she did? That doesn't even seem like a tip of the hat to me.
We were told that under the circumstances that was the most that we could do, and she gladly did that.
Well, certainly through no fault of your own, but it clears up why we sometimes have retention problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say this: the First Lady asked me to bring Lindsay into the office, so I took Lindsay and the human trafficking team, and the human trafficking team has helped Lindsay somewhat. She's not had full responsibility for it. She's taken the primary responsibility. The others on the human trafficking team have relieved her at the times that she needed to be relieved. The First Lady asked us to bring them in. She spent some time in the office with them, and we certainly appreciated very much that recognition. I know it would be nice if there was more monetary recognition, but we've done everything that we can to try to help them understand how much we appreciate the work that they're doing. And they are passionate. They are as passionate and committed of employees as you will ever find. She would have done it without the supplement because it had to be done, and she knew that.
If no more questions, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate you all.
Council of Accountability Court Judges. Hey, Judge, how are you?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I've learned 2 things this afternoon. One, could I possibly meet your wife? And 2, if there's any problems with my presentation, could I blame those on Jay, who I've known for a long time? And he's not listening.
I don't know about meeting my wife.
She sounds like someone I might like. My name is Brenda Weaver, and I serve as the presiding judge in the Felony Drug Court and Veterans Court in the Appalachian Circuit, and I'm one of those older judges. I've been doing this since 2002. And so I'm here today to talk about my passion and the best part of my job, which is accountability courts. I can't believe that it's already been 10 years ago that the legislature created the Council of Accountability Court Judges. Proud to say at this point in time we have 188 courts in this state that include veterans courts, felony drug courts, mental health courts, DUI courts, family treatment courts, and juvenile drug courts. As you know, when you guys created the Council of Accountability Court Judges, and I'm going to call that CACJ, is that we were given the task of creating a framework and rules for all accountability courts in Georgia to abide by. And we provide technical oversight and technical assistance to those courts. And those courts, in order to receive funding from the Council of Accountability Court Judges, must meet certain standards. And I currently serve as the chair of the Standards and Certification Committee. As you know, in your areas, to be eligible for any type of accountability court, you must have a substance use disorder and/or a mental illness. You cannot be charged with any type of gang-related activity or sex crimes or any type of serious violent crime. We work very hard to divert individuals from our state prisons to go into accountability court programs, which range anywhere from 18 months to 24 months. It's very important. It was very important to you in 2015 and 2025 today that we assist those individuals to remain in the community so they can work full-time, they can pay taxes, they can support their children, they can do the things that they need to do in order to be fully tax-paying citizens. And we are glad to say that so many of the individuals that graduate from our programs never again appear in the criminal justice system. Not all of them, but our recidivist rates, as you will find in the annual report that was given to you, are very good, and we are proud of the results that we are having. So, with those remarks, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor Jones, who is the Executive Director of the Council of Accountability Court Judges, who will go over the budget with you. If you have any questions, particularly really hard questions, ask Taylor. I'm here as the cheerleader. Also with me is Josh Becker, who is the Director of Technical Assistance. Where is Josh? And Miss Allison Lerner, who is the General Counsel for the Council of Accountability Court Judges. Thank you.
I used to live up in your district for a little while, but
You did?
yeah.
Well, I hope you spent a lot of money. We need the tax money up there.
Well, I made a lot of money when I sold it,
Oh, okay.
but
We have a lot of people who
me
drive
and
on
Uncle Sam made a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've dealt with your assistant there many times, and she's as knowledgeable about what she does as anybody I've ever dealt with. And I'm a big fan of accountability courts. I live in an area where there are three different jurisdictions, Superior Court jurisdictions, and
Have you attended our graduations?
I attended several of them.
Oh,
and
great. Thank you.
you know, they and I just think I don't know why somebody didn't come up with this earlier. I mean, people go to court, they pay a fine, they go to jail for a couple of days, they go home, and they go back exactly to doing what they were.
Exactly.
Now that it's kind of what I'd call a parent game. But I mean, you hear them, you put certain requirements on them, you require them to take drug tests, you require them to come in, you require them to have a job, and you make them be accountable. And I think that's gone a long way in cutting back on recidivism.
And we include treatment with all of that, so hopefully
Right,
we can assist
right,
them in getting
right.
rid of that problem.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. I think it's been one of the best things we've done in state government in a long time. So,
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Judge Weaver, and good afternoon, Chairman. Judge Weaver's already spoken about, you've got a copy of our annual report for this year and also some additional documentation that outlines our needs for FY26. She's already spoken a little bit about our performance measures, but I always like to take this opportunity each year to report to you, what we're doing and how we're doing it. Last year, we served 8,307 participants through accountability court programs. We also saw 1,814 folks graduate from one of our accountability court programs. Since FY13, we have served over 38,000 Georgians through accountability court programs. It's a number I continue to be proud of and like to see tick up every single year. We've talked a little bit about recidivism already. But I'm proud to report that for a mental health court graduate, just as an example, for 3 years post-program completion, their recidivism rate is a low 24.3%. When you look at a matched comparison group for folks that have similar characteristics but did not participate in an accountability court, that recidivism rate is 55.5%. That's significantly, statistically significant. Our cost savings remain effective for eligible offenders. Last year, we saw that for every state dollar invested into one of these accountability court programs, there was $6.60 saved. We also know and understand that at a conservative rate of $75 per day, it costs the state approximately $27,375 annually to house an inmate in prison. We can serve an accountability court participant with at a state cost of $3,407 annually. There's obviously a lot more information in our annual report. Happy to answer questions about that, but just wanted to give you some of the highlights. So for our tracking sheet, I'm going to just go ahead and jump over to line 30.6.2 and skip that statewide adjustment. It recommends an amount of $512,544 for new and existing accountability court population growth. While we very much appreciate this recommended amount, we're going to respectfully ask that you consider a little bit more, and an amount of $547,581 for a total of $1,060,125 to support accountability court growth. This is going to help us continue to meet the demand for services. As Judge Weaver said, we're up to 188 courts, and we saw a little over 8,300 participants served last year. That's an increase of 11.3%, an additional 843 more participants served in 24 than in 23. So to help us get to this 11.3% increase in population growth, the amount that's really needed, and I'm going to say a big number and I'm going to whittle this down, is $4,100,352. That's based on the average cost per participant with the growth. So to help us get there, we applied for last March and were awarded the accountability courts an opioid crisis abatement trust grant from DBHCD. That amount was $1,653,432. We're thankful for that, and we're going to look forward to distributing those funds here soon so that we can help to meet that increase in population. Additionally, 8 of our accountability courts pursued some of that funding from the regional amounts from DBHCD, and they were awarded an amount total, I should say, of $1,386,795. So the amount that's already recommended in your tracking sheet, the 1.6 that was awarded to CACJ and accountability courts statewide, plus the amount awarded to those 8 accountability courts, and then looking at the additional amount we're asking you to consider here today of $547,581 gets us to that $4.1 million number. I'm going to pause there and for questions if there are any. There's a lot of numbers I just said right in a row.
Number 17.
Yep. Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. All right. Our prisons, as you know, been a little focused. Are we diverting as many nonviolent folks to accountability courts to keep those out of our state prisons? Or are we limited to where we are in our current budget from doing that? Does that make sense?
Do you want to help answer that question?
I want to make sure I understand the question.
We would obviously like folks, nonviolent folks, to end up in your court rather than our state prisons. Are we limited right now at our current budget level?
If it's not increased, yes, sir, we would be.
Yes.
Limited.
What would it take? Can you give us a sense of, because I think everyone in this building would agree that that's a preferred track. So I guess we're trying to get a sense of what would it take to get more folks to you instead of
If we increased it, we increased last year about 11%. We're anticipating that probable 11% again. That is the figures that Ms. Taylor was just going over with you. It took almost $4 million. We've gotten grants from other areas some of the accountability courts, including myself, got a grant also separate and apart from the opiate settlement. So it is the amount that we are asking for to fulfill that 11% increase that we are projecting. So,
But if we did that, is there still more out there that we are not diverting, that we're sending to our state prisons because we can't send them to you?
probably. I don't know. I don't know the amount. A lot of things go into that. And initially, what we also try to do in the circuits that have DRC, a daily reporting center, or have other programs, we also work with the probation department to determine if individuals don't need the full 24 months, maybe they should do the DRC reporting centers first. And then if that doesn't work, we try then to put those individuals in the accountability courts. We try very hard, particularly with young men and women, even though they have a long criminal record, to try those individuals in accountability courts rather than the state prison system. With all due respect to the state prison system, once they go and they come back, there's a lot of damage there that needs to be corrected, and they don't get all of those services that they need on felony probation. So a lot of circuits, what we have started doing, and have actually talked to the parole board, individuals coming out of prison, maybe who need counseling or additional services, we have put some of those individuals into our accountability courts in the state to see how that works out, working with parole. So many of the individuals need that extra care once they are released from the state prison system. I think we all know that, and they can't always get that on felony probation. They need more than felony probation can provide. But the intent is to keep them out of the state prison system. I want to try everything that we can try before we go ahead and say, okay, state prison system, but we need to try the accountability courts and other programs before we do that, because once we do that, that's a lot of things to correct once they get back to us.
And as Judge Weaver was talking to add to her response, I can tell you that if you look at page 56 of our annual report, we've got some information that talks about the factors that affect court capacity, and funding is one of those top capacity issues that our courts report. And that as of Q2 of the current fiscal year, we're already serving, and this is after our quality assurance process of the data that we collect, we're already serving 5,876 participants for this current fiscal year, with 2 more quarters to go. So the numbers are continuing to track upwards. So to pick back up, on line 30.6.3, there is an amount to implement juvenile treatment courts per House Bill 873 from last session in the amount of $17,250. Like I said a moment ago, we very much appreciate the recommended amounts in the tracking sheet, but we are respectfully asking the committee to consider an additional amount of $499,820 for a total amount of $517.70 to support the full implementation of House Bill 873, which established juvenile treatment courts last year that allow us to provide that same level of service in terms of state and state standards, certification, peer reviewing, and providing just general technical assistance and training that we do for adult courts. So of that $517 amount, $208,015 is to provide the technical assistance in the form of training. We offer our adult courts foundational and operational tune-up trainings, and also evidence-based treatment training and risk assessment trainings for those treatment providers that facilitate those services in our programs. We'd also like to see $138,125 of that $517 number for a training coordinator position to implement that technical assistance. We currently have one young lady, Christina, that is working to keep up with 171 adult accountability courts. I looked at her workload between now, or I should say January 27th and March 13th, and coordinating training is just a small portion of her job. She also does a lot of communications for us. She's coordinating 8 trainings in that time period. So she's a very hardworking young lady, and we'd really like to see her have some help to support juvenile treatment courts. In addition to the 8 trainings that she's facilitating now, or I should say coordinating now, we are set to do 40 total trainings this year to support the accountability court community, and that community is seen in the approximately 1,400 folks that attend our statewide conference annually. Also, as part of that 51770 amount, 153,680 of that is requested to support the implementation of Clayton County and their wish to add a juvenile treatment court to their operations, and Chatham and Henry counties that wish to expand their existing programs. They have existing juvenile treatment courts, but I know they want to add additional mental health services in Chatham County and additional substance abuse services to their Henry County program.
Well, you talked a pretty good while there. I got a backlog of questions here, so.
Okay, all right, I'll pause.
Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question to clarify something, and thank you, Judge Weaver, for all that you all do. But clarify for me, you gave a comparison for the cost, annual cost to keep someone incarcerated, and what it costs through drug court, or not drug, through one of the accountability courts. Just give me that, and then I have the question. I just want to make sure I'm straight on it.
Sure. We understand that a conservative cost to house someone in one of our prison systems is $75 a day. We estimate that as an annual cost of $27,375, and our state grant cost to support an accountability court participant annually is $3,407.
Okay, my question, to kind of piggyback on Representative Workhouse, as he was talking, maybe it's above my pay grade, but it kind of seems like a no-brainer to keep people out the prison system if we can. And your request for $4 million, we can't replace the locks on our prisons for $4 million. Just as it's, you know, with the amount of accountability courts you have and what you're seeing, and what it's costing us to incarcerate and what we're seeing existing now. My goodness, we send folk who are a little bad to prison and they come out professional prisoners. I'd sure rather see you all have a go at them myself.
Number 16.
Yes, I think we all want to make sure you get what you need. To go back to 30.6.2 for a second,
Yes.
I know that you all are requesting on top of the OPB recommendation approximately $547,000. Is that intended to cover? We've talked about the 11.3% increase in fiscal year 24, and I see that you are also naturally expecting an increase in participants in FY 25 and 26. Is that additional on top of the OPB recommendation intended to account beyond the 11.3%, specifically for FY 25 or 26? Or if not, could you break down what that additional is for with respect to what it's serving in the increased anticipated population?
What we've prepared today is based off of the current demand, so it's just that 11.3%. For us to be able to provide something beyond that, I need a little time to do some math based off of the projections of what we're seeing from Q2, since we don't have Q3 and Q4 numbers. I don't want to not tell you a good number up here today just because we don't have that data, but I think we could do some projections for you if that's something you're interested in.
I personally would love that.
Okay.
So just to make sure we're absolutely clear, the total amount of $1,060,125 is simply for the 11.3%.
To support 11.3%.
Got it.
The other amounts I talked about awarded in those opioid settlement grants will help us get to that 4.1 number. Thank you. I appreciate the question.
Well, let me get this straight. My understanding is since the criminal justice reform, we have pretty much diverted all nonviolent prisoners into something like probation or something in lieu of prison. You know, our prison's full. We got 49,000 people in there, and they cost a fortune. And as they've already alluded to, we don't reform many of them. We increase their professional criminal behavior. And so what happens now is many of those who get diverted go to you. And then the accountability courts ensure that you try and put them on the straight and narrow, but you make them be accountable. So that drops the recidivism rate, and it keeps us from having to put more people in prison, which are costing us a fortune right now. So, okay. Any more questions? Thank you very much.
I had one more item to bring to
You're
your
done.
attention. Okay.
No, come on.
I will take a seat, sir, if that's what you'd like me to do. So there is an item that is not in your tracking sheet at all, Chairman, but I did want to bring it to your attention today. We have 3 existing accountability courts that are wanting, adult accountability courts that want to expand services. So the Mountain Judicial Circuit, they started serving Banks County as of January 1,
Right.
Based off of the change in the law last year. And Banks County has previously gone unserved. I can attest to that. I used to be the court director for the Mental Health and Drug Court up in the Piedmont Circuit many years ago, and we were never able to effectively serve Banks County. And the Mountain Circuit wishes to begin to do that. We also have the West Georgia Circuit that has started, and they have asked us to support adding Veterans Treatment Court operations to their existing accountability court programs. So that circuit split. The Coweta Judicial Circuit has got resources for their Veterans Treatment Court, but Carroll and Heard counties for the West Georgia Circuit do not. So they're asking for support to keep operations going in that part of, I shouldn't say circuit because it's not the Coweta Circuit anymore, but that part of our state. And then speaking of the Coweta Judicial Circuit, they have an adult felony drug court and veterans treatment court, and they want to add services to begin to serve those diagnosed with a severe and persistent mental illness. So the amount to support those 3 items, Mountain, West Georgia, and Coweta, is an amount of $284,351 that we're respectfully requesting some consideration for. And I think that's it, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, I assure you you'll get consideration, but I tell you, this is a tight budget year based on what we're going to have to do in the Department of Corrections, and I wouldn't be optimistic that you're going to get all of it. I can't speak for the committee as a whole because I don't know what their feelings are about it, but it's going to be a tight budget. And as I said, we already spent $300 million on prisons and supplemental. Probably going to spend more than that in the big budget, and we already spend $1.6 billion a year in the prison system. But y'all are helping us with regard to that amount of money and how many prisoners we have. So we're very positive about that. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate you listening, and thank
Sure.
you for your support.
Keep hope alive.
GMA Homeland Security. Oh my God.
Obviously, Mr. Chairman, I am not Chris Stallings, who you're probably used to seeing.
Well, I know who you are, but I didn't recognize you with that beard.
Oh. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Mike Smith, and up until last week, I was the Chief of Staff at GMA. I'm now the Acting Director since Chris Stallings got picked up by the Small Business Administration. So glad to be here today, but in my first 7 days, things have moved quickly, and in talking with Deputy Director Mark Sexton and getting a briefing, he and Chris worked very closely together on this budget. So I'm going to let Deputy Director Sexton give you the brief on this. I think he is more up to it since he put it together than I am.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Our information is on page 6, 27.8 on the track sheet. And as far as the proposed budget piece, very straightforward. We only have the one adjustment, and that's the statewide change for the insurance. So no change to our $6,261,372. And then, were you able to hand out the hard copies? Okay, gotcha. Okay. So if you can go to slide.
Should have this document on your desk.
Yeah, should be. Yeah. And if you could go to the 3rd slide on that. Yeah. The information. Yeah, it should be. Actually, I didn't bring a color copy, but yep. So, 2nd slide there is just the governor's proposal for us. No change to the operational budget for the agency. And then the third slide, the next two slides address the proposed legislation for, the first one is for Next Generation 911 enhancements across the state. We currently have 16 either counties or cities operating under the Next Generation 911 capabilities. The intent of this, the legislation and the proposed budget piece that came out of the amended, there was a $5,750,000 amount in the amended proposal that came out of the House that is to initiate this work by the Georgia Emergency Communications Authority, which is administratively attached to our agency. So that is to get this process started. We were asked to provide an annualized expense for the continuation of that program for the full FY26, and that's the number you see on here is the $20,135,445. The intent of this funding is to basically work, I won't read the bulletized comment there to you, but it is basically for the network and core services portion of this, make up approximately 9% or $2 million of that, and the remainder is related to the applications that are required for the actual operation of the system. Now I'll pause there.
Well, we had a little misunderstanding with regard to the supplemental, and apparently the money wasn't put in there, it wasn't on a tracking sheet. We didn't know that, and
yes, sir.
When the former director came to me and we had a talk and went back and checked with OPB, and it was supposed to be in there, and
yes,
it's included. So,
yes,
and this
sir.
is the remainder of that.
This is so that portion for the amended was the initiation portion
Right.
for the Georgia Emergency Communications Authority to begin the work with the contractors to actually bring the capabilities online for the remainder of through 30 June, the remainder of FY25. This slide here, this $20 million amount is
Right.
for full FY26 for bringing those actual capabilities on board, getting the physical capabilities in place and working for the training and bringing all the resources to bear across the remaining portions of the state that aren't currently serviced with these capabilities.
We don't have any questions so far. What about the
Okay, sir. All right.
statewide school?
And then the next slide is relative to statewide school and student safety database and the behavioral threat assessment management program to be implemented across the state of Georgia in all 159 counties. So this is a two-part proposal, and again, this is the annual recurring portion relative to what came out in the amended proposal. So there was $3 million in the amended proposal that came out of your committee and then the House to initiate it. Same basic concept. That $3 million is to initiate the coordination with the contractors and putting the groundwork in place to start these systems up in full. And this $37 million is for the full year of fiscal year 26 to start those programs up and get the physical capabilities in place, get the equipment required, get the training in place to implement this across all 159 counties and all school systems in the state.
This isn't on a tracking sheet either. Was that another OPB error, do you know, or? No. She says no. So, but is all this funding coming to GEMA? Because I was reading through a variety of different budget proposals, and I see that there's school safety money is coming through in a lot of different agencies.
Yes, sir. This portion will come through GEMA, but it will be the purpose is much like a throughput grant for the federal funds. It will come through us, but this will go out to support the systems that support all 159 counties. And some of this money will be placed out for physical equipment in those locations, and then training, and then the support of the applications, and then the database work. Part of this is to pull in existing data that's already out there to establish the database, and then it will allow the individual school systems the capability of putting updated data in there to make this available across the state.
Number 16.
Yeah, with both the Next Gen 911 and the BTAM, I'm just curious, for either and both of those, how much of that are basically one-time capital expenditures, and how much of that will be recurring operating costs?
With the Next Gen 911, the plan is for that budgeted amount that on the 26 annualized cost to be there for 4 years for the full implementation and build out of the required physical capabilities to do the data support out to all the counties all the way across the state. Yeah, and if that's okay, I won't go more technical than that, but it's a build out of physical capabilities, and then to make sure that the applications are pushed out to all of those individual counties, and then the training conducted, to put training plan to be developed and then pushed out to all the appropriate counties, so they've got the full up capability. So that's a intended 4-year plan for the next gen period, and give me a second. How many years? 2 years for the Homeland Security, for the school safety portion of that. So that's the full build out. Same concept, getting the information out, getting the equipment in place, developing the training plan, and making sure all the staffs are properly trained. So that's a 2-year number. Welcome.
Would you mind just spending a few minutes and telling us about the capabilities of the new 911 system, or without getting too technical?
Yeah, you're better at that than I am. So.
I have some background in 911, so this has been something, Next Gen 911 is what they call it, and it has been on the books for over 15, 20 years. And basically it's a central EZNet, which would allow calls to be transferred from one 911 center to another across jurisdictional boundaries, regardless of the CAD system technology that you have in 911 systems. Right now, that is kind of a wall. So if you have a neighboring agency gets a 911 call, they can't transfer the call with all the data. They can transfer the voice. So this establishes that overreaching network, which allows for everything to be transferred for the call with the mapping and everything to go through there. Unfortunately, we're one of the last states in the country that haven't done this yet, but it's been ongoing. So this will really be a big push and move us far ahead for all of public safety on this.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
GBI.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Thank you for allowing us to be here to speak with you this afternoon. I will also skip over the state-wide changes unless there's any questions on those for us. I'll begin at 30.1.3, which is to increase funds for a new pool car reservation system under administration at GBI. That funding would replace the GBI's current pool car reservation system that reached its end of life at the end of 2024 in December. That system is no longer supported by the manufacturer. We actually have an updated quote on that of $19,290 for ongoing cost of that pool car system. 30.1.4 is to increase funds to reflect an adjustment to our statewide security contracts through DOAS. We utilize DOAS for our statewide contract for our armed security services at headquarters indicator, which is 24/7 security operation there. DOAS negotiated rates, they have increased over the last several years, and our contract has increased by 18% since FY22. It's gone up by $57,815 since then. So in the governor's recommendation, it increased even since FY24 as well. 30.3.3 is for increased funds for additional service contracts for crime lab instrumentation. In FY26, the House restored $1.5 million in service contracts for the crime lab instrumentation. We greatly appreciate that. Due to the fact that those service contracts assist us in keeping all the equipment and instrumentation current, it helps reduce the backlog time. If a piece of equipment goes down, we get the service calls and response times much quicker, and they often also provide unlimited parts for those instruments if they do go down or have an issue. The additional funds are needed in amended 25 and 26 due to the continuing cost increases and equipment that was previously under warranty also needing to be added to these service contracts. 30.3.4 would increase funds for one crime lab assistant manager at our headquarters crime lab. That would assist in the span of control, specifically on that one position for our chemistry section, which, as I've mentioned several other times, maintains our highest backlog in the crime lab. The amended this year added another assistant manager position for a total of 2, and then we can utilize those 2 assistant manager positions both within chemistry or one in chemistry and then one in biology. Biology accounts for about 4% of our backlog currently right now. The majority of that obviously being at our headquarters lab where we could utilize that position.
Chemistry is the big backlog, isn't it?
Chemistry is, yes, sir. Drug evidence.
Yeah.
30.3.5 would increase funds would be funds for one crime lab scientist, one crime lab technician, and one evidence receiving technician at our central lab down in Macon. Those specifically would be for, again, our chemistry section. The governor's recommendation increases that capacity, and like I mentioned, we would put that in our chemistry section there. I've mentioned this again already, that's where our largest backlog is, and is in chemistry overall, but Macon holds the second highest percentage backlog behind headquarters. So that would be the reasoning for helping out with that. 30.4.4 is to increase funds for ongoing maintenance and support of the case management system and leads tracking system that are part of the investigative division. We're in the process of replacing our case management system NID right now, which was referred to as GymNet. It has reached end of life. The new system should go live July 1st. We also have implemented a leads tracking system. These funds are required to cover software, cloud services, need for the increase in bandwidth. The total annual cost is around $1.57 million. The current budget is $1 million. 30.4.5 provides funds for 2 crime scene technical leaders and 3 digital forensic investigators. Our crime scene specialist program require advanced training on processing and collecting evidence at crime scenes, obviously around the state. They are subject matter experts, and they're called routinely to testify in court as subject matter experts. We currently have 32 crime scene specialists, and they are overseen by 1 crime scene program coordinator. The funding would provide that additional oversight with these 2 positions, mentoring, training, and then obviously quality control on the product that they're putting out in the crime scene examination documentation as well. The digital forensic investigators provide highly specialized technical support in accessing and retrieving digital materials and reporting those findings, those materials being pulled off electronic devices, computers, cell phones, even vehicles nowadays.
That's got to be something that you do in just about every investigation anymore, isn't it? Computers, cell phones.
Nearly every investigation has a piece of electronic equipment that holds some valuable, potentially valuable evidence.
And even if it doesn't, you have to look.
That's right, yes, sir. Because everybody has cell phones at least. Those DFI positions require extensive training, testing, continuing education. Currently, our DFIs are digital forensic investigators. They're located at our child exploitation unit at headquarters and at our cyber center in Augusta. This proposal would start to bring those DFIs and embedding them in our regional offices out in the field. As I've mentioned in our last hearing, Mr. Chairman, that is something that we tried a few years ago with our intel analyst, is getting them out of necessarily one central location and getting them out and getting them embedded into the work units, where I just believe the ownership in what they're doing is much better. They're more involved, and they obviously get to see the finished product of their work as well. 30.4.6 would provide funds to establish a strategic threat assessment group responsible for addressing threats to public officials, investigating homeland security matters, and partnering with critical infrastructure partners to provide support during major events like national championship games and things of that nature, all-star games coming up that occur in this state. It is an expansion, would be considered an expansion of our current GSAC unit, and it would provide 2 sworn positions to handle that increase that we've seen in domestic threats to elected officials, elections when they come about, school threats, special events, and our ports of entry that we have around in the state as well. Just to give you a little bit of information there, in 2024, we had 447 threats to life received by GSAC and 166 threat screening encounters, which is an encounter either at our ports or with law enforcement of an individual that has been inputted into the terrorist screening center. So there are major concerns there. 30.4.7 would replace federal funds with state funds for 3 human trafficking positions. Our HEAT unit, that's our human trafficking unit, was created in July of 2020. Since then, they've worked over 500 cases since their inception. They are focusing on, obviously, commercial sex trafficking investigations, labor trafficking, as well as safe recovery of trafficking victims. The grant funds that we were receiving from CJCC for those positions are no longer available. They actually ended in August of last year, and we are currently looking, and will be, the funding here is, I believe, for 6 months, and during that time we will look to see and explore if there's any other funding options without using state funds for that. But I don't think there will be. It requires that victim assistance individual that we don't have, and I think that's going to be a requirement of that. That's all, Mr. Chairman and committee members, in our FY26 governor's recommendations. Did you want me to cover any of the capital projects?
No.
Okay.
No.
But I will say that when the Oconee County property that you had asked the Colonel about, that was in the amended for the funding for design and construction for our part there.
Is that the only new field office?
Yes, sir. Well, we're moving the Athens office. Region 11 office in Athens would be going there. Yes, sir.
Well, are you finally up to speed on scientists, or do we?
We have 22 that are currently in training. They will be finished in June, I believe it is. Different points in time they'll finish between now and then. What is our scientist vacancies now? 23 crime lab scientists right now. All of those, correct me if I'm wrong, they are in some form of hiring right now.
Are you still losing them to higher paying agencies, or?
Not as bad. We had a percentage that it is, our turnover has gone down significantly. Obviously, since the salary increases
That was
received
going to
last
be my
year
next
by the
question, is
legislature.
whether or not that helped any.
It did.
Yeah.
We've actually had some that are considering coming back.
Oh, well, that's great.
Now, I ain't seen them come through the door yet, but yeah, I hope so.
Anybody else got any questions? Okay. What? Number 16.
Just a quick question. On the Strategic Threat Assessment Group, that is either mostly or solely to fund those two positions you were talking about, or are there other expenditures as
It
part
would
of
be to fund those two
those two
positions.
positions? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
everybody.
We're working on topics on.
Well, I guess you know that you're next since you're the only ones left.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll take it as a great compliment being last. I've always heard you save the best for last. So,
Well, in some occasions.
well, are you leaving? I see how it is. That's all right. That's all right. Thank you so much. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for allowing us to be here.
He's with the State Board of Pardon and Parole, so
Yep.
if you ever get in trouble, you want to know him.
We're here to talk a little bit about the FY 2026 budget recommendations. Here with me today is our Chief Financial Officer and Legislative Liaison, Ms. Kristen Kinney. Our budget begins on page 11 of your tracking sheet. And outside of statewide changes, we have one unique line item, and that falls under our Victim Services Program budget, and that is line 35.3.2 to provide funds for two victim advocate positions in the amount of $127,915. These two victim advocate positions will help support the Georgia Office of Victim Services, represented here today by our Director of the Georgia Office of Victim Services, Mr. Keir Chappell, and our newest members to the Georgia Office of Victim Services, that is our K-9 handler, Mandy Kimner, and our K-9 Comfort K-9, Asher. Yeah. We know how stressful these legislative days can be and the appropriations process, so if anybody needs some one-on-one time with Asher, he's available here for you. Just let us know.
Doesn't bite, does it?
No, not yet. The Georgia Office of Victim Services is unique. While it's housed here with the Georgia Parole Board, it actually provides all post-conviction victim services for the Georgia Department of Corrections, the Georgia Parole Board, and the Georgia Department of Community Supervision. So they really are the one-stop shop for all post-conviction victim services. It's important to note that these two positions that are being recommended and requested are not new positions. These positions have been funded at various levels through the VOCA grant since 2017. And as y'all are aware, those funds have been decreasing over the last few years, and last year we saw a 54% reduction in funds. Now, the committee granted us a gap fund appropriation last year to get us across as we continue to have conversations with CJCC and OPB about alternative funding resources. And while CJCC was able to come up with an emergency fund to get us through FY25, they have indicated to us that beyond that, funding is not likely, and we would need to secure an alternative funding source. And so that's why we're here today, and that's why we ask for your favorable consideration of that line item.
Okay, any questions?
Fantastic. Thank y'all so much.
Well, we'll hold you a minute and see if we can come up with something. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it. Okay, I think we've got some other people out here. We always open it up at the end if anybody wants to make any comments or have any issues they want to discuss, or if you'd come to the podium, just tell me who you are and who you represent, and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Gale, and I'm representing the National Insurance Crime Bureau. It's a nonprofit that helps the insurance industry and law enforcement crack down on insurance fraud across the country. Hunter Towns is with me representing the rental car industry, and I'll turn it over to him in a minute. But I don't know if Sarah was able to put this letter in your folders, but there's a letter from, and I can make sure the subcommittee has a copy of it afterwards. But there's a letter in your folders, or if not, I'll make sure we get it, regarding a bill that you all probably recall that was passed in 2023 by Chairman John Corbett, House Bill 268, which creates the Motor Vehicle Crime Theft Prevention Program with an attached advisory board. That program was created by law, but it is yet to receive seed funding to kick off the work of that program. The advisory board was coincidentally sworn in by Governor Kemp today, and the hope is that this committee will consider working to put some seed funding in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council budget of the tune of $750,000 to jumpstart the work of this crime prevention program. As you all know, motor vehicle crimes are oftentimes a part of a gang activity in which gangs will target vehicles to access guns that are in under seats and in glove boxes, et cetera, but also use them to facilitate crimes. And it costs all of us in terms of insurance rates when motor vehicle crimes are not punished. That $750,000 will go to a position within the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to help administer and work with law enforcement with grant funding for probably multi-jurisdictional law enforcement grants across the state. The letter that I'm referencing is signed by Chairman Corbett, Chairman Clint Crow, who's the Public Safety Committee Chair, Chairman Eddie Lumsden with the Insurance Committee, and Chairman Noel Williams, Banks and Banking, because many of these vehicles also have loans that are due. And as an aside, Chairman Williams can tell you about how he was a victim of a motor vehicle theft that also resulted in firearms being taken. With that, I'll turn it over to Hunter Towns to speak to the committee.
I just want to speak on behalf of specifically Enterprise, Alamo, and National, and for the car and truck rental industry in general. One of our employees, or one of Enterprise's employees, is serving on the board. They've been supportive and want to continue to be as the program hopefully grows, and we just would ask your support in helping us try to get the seed money to get it up and going, and anything we can do from our end, we want to be of assistance.
Is that with regard to stolen vehicles or theft after trust, when they rent them and then never bring them back? And
Either.
Either.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And you referenced the issue of tractor trailer trucks. I think this would be all encompassing.
Well, I was wondering, we already have a unit that deals with tractor trailers and, truck stops, and you probably heard me say, but it's been going on for years. Very valuable commodities are stolen, and I was being kind of a little comical, I wanted to think about the egg truck, but I was in the grocery store the other day, and I think eggs are about $7 a dozen right now, tractor trailer load, but they steal all kinds of commodities. I mean, we had one back in Scriven County, which is in the middle of nowhere, sold a truckload of shrimp about 20 years ago, and we never did catch them. I mean, I think it probably went westward, but they got rid of it and found an empty truck about a year later. It was in the river. So, but that's, 60,000 pounds of shrimp costs a little bit of money too.
Well, it wouldn't apply so much to tractor trailers as what you were
Cars.
speaking to earlier, but,
Yeah.
but for us on the truck side, it could be, as you mentioned before, not necessarily commodities, but for instance, trucks out towards the studios south of town that are moving movie equipment from one studio to the other, things like that. Furniture, I mean, you name it, it's the same.
See, there's already a group with GBI and Motor Carrier Compliance Division that work for tractor trailers.
Right.
And,
So ours would be a little bit different than that, but.
It's a little different, but
Yes, sir.
much the same. It's not as much commodity.
But the cars,
as,
you know,
yeah,
I mean, that's.
not as much
that's the
commodity
biggest-
except weapons and cars.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, which are both costly items. So. Any questions? Number 16.
I'm asking this because you heard our conversation on CJCC earlier. I heard that part of the $750,000 is for a position within CJCC. Is that correct? Is the rest of that grant funding to be provided to? And how much is that position?
So we did, of course, consult with CJCC to get their input on what a position would entail, and they estimate it'll be about $105,000 to $125,000, and that includes salary, benefits, but also administrative costs that they know will be incurred. So subtract that from 750, and the remainder would be for local government law enforcement grants.
And I don't guess it's changed, but about when you hire a person in state government, about 40% of what's budgeted is in benefits, health insurance, retirement, all the.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make sure that I get a copy of this letter
Okay.
to Sarah for the subcommittee.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Oops.
Picking things.
Careful.
I know.
I don't want to get sued.
Fall down up here. That would not be good. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I will be brief. My name is Nancy Petra. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Alzheimer's Association in Georgia. And the Alzheimer's Association, we are the leading voice for people living with any form of dementia, as well as their caregivers at the state and at the federal level. And so I'm here today to advocate for an addition to the GIPSTIC budget for fiscal year 26. At-risk adult issues, including elder abuse, benefits trafficking, are on an increase, and we've done a lot in Georgia, and we have a lot going on around those things. And when we want to invest in GIPSTIC's ability to be able to train their law enforcement as well as any first responder, so we worked with them over the summer and fall and came up with this idea of them building out some additional continuing education curriculum for all first responders that would help them better respond to things like benefits trafficking, people living with Alzheimer's that might be wandering. We've seen an increase in missing persons calls for those that are living with dementia that are still living independently in the community. So we know that as individuals living with dementia are at a higher risk of interacting with law enforcement. The data tells us that 6 out of 10 people with some form of dementia will wander, especially as they get later in their journey with the disease. And so that increases their risk of them driving and getting pulled over or maybe wandering away from home, and law enforcement and other first responders needing to interact with them. There's also an uptick continually in financial fraud. In 2023, the FBI recorded over 2,000 cases of elder fraud report complaints just in Georgia, and that amounted to about $92 million in financial losses for older adults. So we also know that the 65 and older aging population, that cohort, is the fastest growing aging cohort nationally, but also in Georgia. So we feel like this is a timely investment in helping our first responders be able to better respond to these at-risk adult situations in Georgia. So what we're advocating for is an additional $500,000 to GIPSTIC's budget. This would allow them to add staff and do train the trainer programs around very specific topics: benefits trafficking, elder abuse, really identifying when it's family caregivers, because unfortunately sometimes it is family, and then interacting with people with Alzheimer's, recognizing the behaviors, techniques that are alternatives to restraints when maybe coming across someone who's really having an outburst, maybe. And we've seen them in a Walmart parking lot and someone's carrying a a knife or some kind of household tool, being able to bring that person down and interact with them in a way that de-escalates the situation without restraints. So these are the types of techniques that we're looking to have them do trainings on topics for all first responders, and we hope that you can favorably consider this request.
Any questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Huh? I think we've overspent already if we approved everything. Okay, if there are no further questions, no further participants, we're adjourned. Thank you all for hanging in there.